My name is Claudine Contreras, and I am a producer here. I've been doing this since, almost 20 years. I started writing in college, and I started out in like radio, television, and film because I didn't really know that there was such a position as a producer in news. So by the time I figured that out, I had to take a minor in broadcast journalism so that I would get, the writing and the news writing and that kind of thing. So after I finished that, we had a college TV station, and I worked there, I think, for like a year, no pay, and I did an internship at KCBS, and that was paid, so that helped. But college really is what helped the most. That's what taught me how to produce, really. And we didn't have anything high tech then, and it was at Cal State Northridge, so we just had an earthquake, so we were in like trailers.
As a producer, what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
What a day-to-day basis. You have to, you come in, you make sure it starts before you even come in. You have to know all the news that's happening of the day. So you can't just come in and start your job. You have to turn on the news. I go through newspapers, I go through stuff online like New York Times, LA Times, UT, Voice of San Diego. I write down things that I think would be interesting. I come in, we have a meeting, we hear everybody's ideas, we decide what's important, and then we have a blank page, which is called a rundown on the computer, and we start plugging in stories.
Talking about writing, what should people think about as they get down to start writing a story?
They should, first of all, the first thing you want to do is know all the facts. Well, actually, the first thing you want to do is make sure you understand the story. If you don't, you need to make sure you take a breath and read it first, and if you don't understand, read it again. If you still don't understand it, go Google it and find a different way that somebody else wrote it so that you can understand it. So just don't regurgitate what somebody else wrote, because if you don't understand it, chances are a lot of people out there don't understand it.
Okay.
When and how.
Okay, we got a lead story, or a lead sentence. How important is that lead sentence?
The lead sentence is very important because that's your chance to grab people, but you also you want it to be correct, first of all, and you want it to be conversational. Those are the most important things to me before trying to jazz anything up, is you have to have your facts straight, and it has to be conversational. Having it be conversational is going to help it be a little bit more compelling, as opposed to if you wrote something like, the police or the burglar fled on foot and police chased the suspect around the corner. It's like you would never say that to one of your friends. So something like, police chased a guy who tried to rob a store, and they ran for blocks or something like that. So,
why is it so important to hold the audience's attention?
Well, because if you don't hold their attention, then they're going to change the channel, and it won't matter what you wrote in the rest of the story. So you have to hook them right in the beginning.
Now, when you're writing a lead sentence and you want to hook somebody into the story and have them listen, should you be dramatic, really dramatic, or? You
can be dramatic, but you can't be dramatic where it's not called for. I mean, you have to have the right tone for each story. Like if there's dead people, if someone's died, if you're just trying to be dramatic without taking into perspective that someone's dead, you have to, and sometimes you just want to play something straight. But if it's a story like where there's, I can't even think of something, but if there's like a wild chase, or if there's some great video, or something like, hey, you really got to see this. This was amazing. You can say this is amazing video if you think it's amazing. You can tell them, hey, stop what you're doing and check this out. This is what happened this morning as you were driving to work. Something like that.
Why is that? There's some people that have the TV on, not necessarily watching.
Yeah, they have the TV on when they're sometimes just background, like when people get ready in the morning. Like I listen more than I watch. Sometimes I don't even know what the anchors are wearing until I get to work because I haven't looked up once. But if someone tells me, hey, this is something you want to look up from, or if you're like, almost everybody's on their iPad too, or their phone also at the same time. So even if you're sitting down watching TV, chances are you could be looking down. So it's important to call attention to it when you have great video. And it's okay to do that.
And what are some really common mistakes that young writers make?
The two most common things are, number one, not having all the facts right. Like they might leave out an important fact, like when something happened. Like you write everything, and like if there's a burglary or if there was some type of crash or accident, and they just assume it happened that day, when in reality it may have happened yesterday, or it's not time specific, like it happened overnight, but there's no reference at all to time. So I feel like that's important. And the other is not speaking conversationally. So, fled on foot, the blaze broke out. I never say blaze, it's a fire. It's always a fire, and it always started and it didn't break out. So there's things like that. Residents, you would never say, your next door neighbor is a resident of his home. He is, but he's your neighbor, or he's the guy who lives next door to you, or he's your friend. So he's a homeowner. That's even better than resident, but resident's not good.
What are some things that people can do to make their writing a little bit more conversational?
They can watch a lot of news. It's always important to read whatever you've said out loud. I mean, I do it all the time, and don't worry about looking weird or whatever. I always read all my stories out loud. You don't have to yell it, but just read it to yourself. And if it sounds like something you would never say, or as you're reading it, you can't really get through it yourself, then it's not conversational at all. So do that, and read newspapers. Although newspapers aren't that conversational, but that is a good example of all the facts and how everything's included. So,
do you have like a funny story, or what's a crazy story in news while you're producing and things that are going on in the newsroom?
Well, I will say it's very important that you get. That you check your facts correctly. Not only one letter can make a difference. One time I wrote something about new Slurpees in 7-Eleven, and I don't even know why I wrote that, but it was mango, and I think I called it mulch or something, or mange. I left the O off the mango, so it sounded like their new flavor was mange. So that's not really funny, but it got all the way to the anchor. And then when we were in a writing workshop later, she used that as an example of what not to do. So you might think it's not important, and that's another reason to read it out loud. So, but everything, and you also know with TV or whatever, you don't have a lot of time for things too, so you can't sit there and read a story 18 times and try to find the best way to do it. Sometimes you just have to do it and move on. So you're under constant deadline, so it's stressful. So just know it's going to be stressful.
Okay. What's a story that's really memorable?
There was one that's not that bad. There was one time a woman named Janet Lucero parked on the side of the 67, and I was doing a midday show. I was a young producer. She parked her car. She had guns. They thought she didn't have anything, and so we had to watch her on the side of the road and just stay on that shot for like 5 hours. So we just sat there and watched the car. Anyways, they stopped traffic. People were like, one lady was afraid she was going to have her baby back in the traffic stop, and there was no way to get them off the freeway. So just sitting there and not knowing, oh my God, what am I going to do? All I have is this one thing to go to. That's when, as a producer, you just kind of rely on your anchors, but you got to be focused that whole time. Like if you start drifting off, then you're be like, where are we going next? That's the one thing you have to always have an answer to. Where are we going next? So if you know where you're going next, then you're okay. Once you get where you're going, don't ever relax. Just know you got to stay where you're going next after that.